Hello there, and welcome to the Impact Zone podcast. We are back once again talking more TNA wrestling shenanigans, and today I want to discuss botches in wrestling. It is one of those things that happens here and there and whatnot. Sometimes in wrestling. Uh, what kind of brought about this me discussing botches was watching this last week's episode of TNA Explosion and seeing young kid in there that I really haven't heard of before, Zion. Um, Come in. Apparently, had some training, is from NXT or had some stuff in NXT and whatnot. It's one of those things. It can happen, and it does happen, and whatnot. That people botch, despite what Chris Jericho whatever says, anything like this, botches happen. You got to roll with the punches, bro. That's the only way. I don't want to call somebody out on botching or whatever, or badmouth them or whatever, whatnot. That it's a very hard sport to be in. It's a very hard business. It takes a lot of uh, energy and effort, and all of this to do, and anyone can botch it at any time. It seems like this young kid's just sort of started. He's from Australia, actually, so go Aussie, go, oi oi. So I want to give him the ups there to represent Australia, mate. Represent us as Australians. But yeah, do us proud too. We don't want to see someone you know, stinking up the joint and whatnot. So, yeah, I want to wish him the best of luck, and I don't want to dwell on him specifically too much, but it's just sort of that's what kind of brought it up. I just thought, we haven't really talked about botches in wrestling, because obviously the botches aren't, great, but the thing is, like, sometimes they can work for, certain things, like if you can roll with the punches per se, and you can turn it into something that looks good rather than just looking, rather generic and doing the same generic things and whatnot. You can't really change the match once you botch. Like, you've botched, that's it. Like, in a sense, like, there's no going back from that botch. But you know so, and just thinking through things and saying, hey, well, there's no way we can change that. We have to work with the match given as it is now. We can't, you can go to try to do the spot again or whatever, or move to doing another spot or whatever. I think it's one of those things you can't really change, you know when something happens and it's not really meant to happen. um it's happened now, so you can't, like, you can be mad at somebody or whatever, but at the end of the day, you know you've just got to be like, okay, well, it happens. Even if it happens again in another few minutes or whatever it is, you've got to move with it. You've got to keep going. Okay, all right, let's get through this as best as we can, because botches can be dangerous, and that's the thing. Like, you might not know that, hey, well, am I going to keep this match going, as planned? Do I really trust this person to, perform at the level that I think that they need to, based on them botching? Maybe, or maybe not. But it's one of those things, like, especially with a young wrestler, I would start saying no. With a veteran, it does depend on their age or whatever, that sort of thing, and whatnot. So again, it does depend on the situation that you're in. If you're not feeling safe, in a match with somebody who's botched a little bit already. Like, look at the Goldberg versus Undertaker match. I think that match should have just been called off at a certain point because the botches that were in there were just leading more and more and more to, um, you know, an unsafe match that could have, either drastically injured somebody or potentially even killed somebody. Um, so that is the risk of, botches in matches. It's not just, it makes you look bad and it makes the wrestling look fake and whatnot and that sort of thing, which is obviously bad, but it makes people less trusting of you, and it obviously makes the match more dangerous than what it really needs to be. You, like, out there, you really need to be able to protect your opponent as much as what you can. You can't always protect them from everything, but you need to do your best job to do that. You're a partnership. When you're in that ring, you're working together to, you know have a match and tell a story and, you know, showcase what you can do, because that is what you can do, is that showcase of a match. And sometimes, like getting that chance to, okay, we can go for 10 minutes, we can go for 15 minutes, we can go for 20 minutes, or whatever it is, we can go for a good half an hour, and we can tell our story and, showcase to those people, what it is that we have in the tank, so to speak. Sometimes you're only given, a few minutes, but sometimes even that is, perhaps ill-advised. I don't know if that's the right way to look at it, but, you've got to give people a chance to shine, because you don't, like, I didn't know anything about this young kid, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, but again, like, if this is somebody's first impression of somebody, it's going to be a lot. And the same for the wrestler that's in the ring and the referee and everyone else. It's like, oof, that was, a rough match. I'm glad it wasn't too rough, and it wasn't, didn't lead to any issues really. Like, maybe it led to somebody getting yelled at backstage or whatever, or, told off a bit or whatever, and that sort of thing. But, like, that's really minor when you consider that, anything could happen, really. Like, certainly if you're a bit too trusting, or if you're, whatever, if you're not cavalier, but sort of a bit cavalier with what you give to somebody, or what you decide to do when somebody, you don't know whether somebody's trustworthy or what, or whatever, like, you've got to make that call, in a sense. And same with the referee, like, it is up to the referee's discretion sometimes to say, are these guys really gonna keep this up? Let's just, find a quick exit here. Let's wrap this up, guys. Let's go home, And even, like, your competitor, again, like, you might have been slotted for 10 minutes or whatever it is. I don't know. Maybe a few more minutes or whatever it is, or maybe only one more minute or whatever it is. But just based on, a botch or two or here or there, people might say, oh, well, let's wrap this up as quickly as what we can. I mean, maybe if it's not a major botch, it can be, but starting to become more major botches, it starts becoming like, nah, let's wrap this up and whatnot, and let's get out of here, and we'll work this out later, because obviously, maybe and maybe again it is the nerves of somebody, especially when you're young or whatever you're trying to do a little bit too much, or you're trying to be a bit too fancy or flashy or cool, or you just think that you're invincible, or because you're young and whatnot and all of that. So yeah, it's one of those things that you kind of got to go through sometimes with some people, and their mind says you never know what it is, because again it could be nerves, or whatever, or it could be some other anxiety issue or whatever. It could, like it could be alcohol or drug related. I don't want to, make accusations of anything of anyone or whatever. But again, like it could be. So that sort of thing needs to be, looked at and dealt with if that is there at any rate. So, but yeah, no, like the botches can happen with anyone, like I sort of said, at any time. So, wrestlers have got to be vigilant, referees have got to be vigilant, with, and it's same with the commentary or the team that's involved, the medical staff and whatnot that are on hand, etc. They've got to be vigilant and ready to go, just in case there is something that goes wrong. Look at Triple H pedigree and Kurt Angle through that table, basically concussed the poor guy, because the table gave way. That's not a botch per se, but it's something that went wrong, with the flow of the fight, and then the fight was or the match was screwed up from there. So it doesn't have to just be we fuck something up. It can be like, oh well, something didn't go to plan, and the table gave way, or this gave way, or they landed in the wrong spot or whatever. They grazed it, they did this, they did that, whatever it was, or this happened. If someone came from the crowd, whatever. Like that can happen a lot when you're fighting in the crowd, and that's why you got to be confident when you go into the crowd and fight. You've got to be thinking, how bad this could be, and you got to be able to take care of yourself. So it is what it is, and that sort of thing. So again, I don't want to heap negativity on one person or whatever, because again, accidents happen, but again, this is what professional wrestlers have to do. You have to, how deeply entrenched are you in this? Why are you doing this? Like, again, especially if you're a younger person, why? Like, why this? Like, are you really dedicated? Like, get back to the, drawing board effectively and start, honing your craft. This is what wrestling is all about: honing your craft, making sure you are looking good, and making sure your opponent is looking good, and making sure that you're protecting your opponent at all times as much as what you can, while trying to have a competitive match between you and them. And perhaps that does take a lot more maturity and a lot more knowledge and a lot more stuff in the business than some people have, and some people never get it. And that's why they only really wrestle more basic and more simple matches, because it's one of those things that they don't know anything or any better, and haven't really learnt it, because they've only been used to that very simple structure of a match. So it's harder to get them to do more complex matches and whatnot. But then again, if you have a good ring general on your hands, they can sort of drag that out. But again, it does depend again on how bad, things are and whatnot. But they used to say, what was it, that they could wrestle a broom or whatever and get a good match or whatever, and whatnot. Like, it's easier to be that babyface with the fire and just have a few comeback spots and whatnot than having to, be the ring general and actually, be able to flow everything together. And especially when you are that ring general, you've got to take control when those botches do happen, or when those mistakes or those accidents or whatever do happen. You've got to take control of the match, and then you might even have to change the match, or come up with a new finish, or come up with a new sequence, or change the entire match, or whatever. Like, you don't know what you're gonna, like, be faced with after a certain thing. So yeah, it's one of those things you're never gonna know. Situations are always going to be different, and that's why taking chances and taking risks is not great. But again, you've got to do that stuff. You can't just paint by numbers and have the same match every night. Like, although a lot of people do tend to have the same sort of match every night and every week and every month and whatnot, that sort of thing. But again, it's all about context, really. Like, what is the context of this match? And a lot of these, like, B matches that I'm talking about, this B match or whatever, or even C match or whatever you want to call it, probably doesn't really matter, because not a lot of people probably would see it, and those people that will see it will understand it and probably move on. They, again, so they don't expect a lot. But they do see it and they go, oof, like, that probably wasn't good. It's not a good first impression to make when you go out there and, somebody's given you an opportunity and whatnot. But again, that's where you've got to say, hey, no, I did stuff up, I'm sorry, and blah, blah, blah. Maybe I should go back to the drawing board or whatever, and maybe I'll come back when I'm a bit more ready or something or whatever. And, or I'm going to keep working at this and I'll get better and, whatnot, that sort of thing. You've either got to have one attitude or the other attitude of saying, right, well, so, you've got to have the attitude of saying you're sorry and whatnot, but you've got to have the attitude of saying, well, I'm going to go away and try and better myself and try to, build myself up and brick by brick or whatever, start from scratch or whatever sort of thing. Or you've got to say, well, maybe this business isn't for me. How passionate really am I? Am I just in it for the money? What am I in this for? And I'm not accusing this specific young man of that. I'm just saying, in general, where are you at and what's going on, and self-analyze. Why am I doing this? Could I be doing something else? Would I be more successful at doing that? Would it be more easy? Would I be making more money? That sort of thing. So just keeping in mind what you want. And if this is what you want, you got to go, no, look, I've got to train, I've got to work, I've got to, make sure that I am reliable and safe and people trust me, and, we can work together and people understand that I'm not just here to, make money or just scoot by or whatever. I am passionate and I do care and I do want to get better, and, we'll work at it and we'll do, what it takes, and we'll show people respect, and, we'll take on their advice and whatnot and their criticisms or whatever. So that's where you got to be at. You got to know what you're getting yourself into. But that is pretty much it here for this one. Hope you guys have sort of enjoyed this one. Hope I didn't botch too much here. But it is what it is. And like as a wrestler, when I was out there, I'm pretty sure I botched a bunch of things in learning and training and whatnot. I think the biggest one was getting accidentally kicked in the head there, and whatnot, and that left me with a concussion, and that wasn't a lot of fun. So yeah, I think that was the first real concussion in life that I actually even had. So yeah, but whatever, it is one of those things, But yeah, certainly moved on from that, and I don't know whether I'll ever go back into doing it, but that's what I self-analyze to do. I self-analyze to say, well, why am I doing this? I have passion for it, but am I really that deep into it? And I still think about it all the time. Maybe you can tell that by the fact that I do this podcast, because I keep talking about wrestling and whatnot, and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed, and hope you catch you again in another one.